The James Show Podcast.
But right now, we're still looking at not so much the ICE shooting itself that happened in Minneapolis, but more importantly now, the aftermath, the reaction to it. Are we really going to use this as a chance to turn down the temperature and back off the heated rhetoric? And of course not. They didn't do it after Trump got shot in the ear. They didn't do it after Charlie Kirk got assassinated. They're not going to do it now. If they didn't do it after all these other ICE attacks, this is working for them. This is good for them. This helps them. You realize how much of this sick stuff is being allowed to go on? I mean, stuff that's clearly immoral, unethical, illogical, just because it helps Team Blue. Why? Why would they allow mass illegal immigration and mass legal immigration that's not good for this country? Because it's good for Team Blue. Why would they allow them to just come in here and hop on welfare and stay on welfare for 10, 20 years after they've been here? Is that good for the country? Is that good for you, the taxpayer? No, that's good for Team Blue. Why would they let them rob all these welfare systems and programs? Is that good for the country, the taxpayer? No, that's good for Team Blue. Keeps a committed voting bloc. A lot of that money ends up back in the pockets of these people. All they got to do is look the other way. Why do you think Tim Walz was chosen to be Kamala Harris's running mate? This isn't ancient history. This is just a year and a half ago. Was he a better candidate than Josh Shapiro or Gavin Newsom? Or could he raise more money? Because there was a lot of people who were shocked that when after he was announced to be the vice presidential nominee, remember they were bragging on how the fundraising went through the roof? Yeah, we added Tim Walz to the ticket. We raised $35 million in the first week. Well, now we know where that money's coming from, right? But look, let's not beat up on the politicians. Let's talk about the people on the ground. What causes someone to want to do this? What causes someone to not only want to block ICE, but then when something bad happens, they got to go out there and they got to cuss ICE and tell them it's bad. And we need to keep the illegals here. And I don't care if they're defrauding us. They're lying about all that. Let's check out this one protester. Someone put a microphone in front of her face, and this is some heartbreaking stuff, but you need to digest it.
So, I mean, I'm just walking around kind of just dayside because I was like, I don't know if it's the right thing to do. It feels kind of wrong being here in some way. I don't know why.
Why do you think, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, like, where that stems from. Like, I mean, part of it is being like a white woman that I'm privileged and I have a lot of privilege. So I feel like white tears are not always something that's helpful or necessary when black and brown people have been experiencing this for a long time. This isn't new for them. And so I don't know if that makes any sense in that way.
How did you decide that you should be here? Or are you still figuring that out?
Well, I work like 2 miles from here. So driving by, it was like, I'm here. I'm 2 miles. I can stop. So, I mean, I'm just walking around kind of just dazed.
All right. The heartbreaking part of that, she discounts her own tears because of the color of her skin. I don't know if my white tears mean anything. I'm just a white person. I'm just a white woman. I don't even know if I should be here. So you're discounting your own opinion. You're putting value on something based solely on the color of your skin. You know, the definition of racism is the belief that certain groups of people are better or worse based solely on the color of their skin, based solely on their race. So she's an anti-white racist, or that sounds like something that would fit the philosophy of an anti-white racist. I bet you if you put a microphone in front of her face and ask if you're an anti-white racist, I don't think she would say yes. But you see this happening over and over and over. People didn't want to stop the Somali grift because calling out Somalis, you risk looking like a racist. That's terrible. People don't want ICE to go out and do their jobs because, oh my goodness, they're picking on brown people. I don't want to be racist. There's a couple of other weird things that are going on here. And it's not just about this one issue. This happens over and over and over. For decades now, we've been screwing over qualified students from top universities based solely on the color of their skin. And we don't want to say anything about it. Why? Because we don't want to sound racist. Well, it's getting ridiculous to where this level of self-hatred is showing up in the real world. There was a statistic being passed around that said in 1900, 38% of the world population was white. Now it's only 8%. And I was like, that doesn't sound true. Looked it up. Okay, if you take the extreme estimates, that's pretty close to true, if not right on the money. Now, there are more white people now than in 1900, but just barely. And with all the new technology and nutrition and science and medicine, we've seen the populations of pretty much every other demographic of people explode on planet Earth. And we've talked about this before. There is a level of suicidal empathy that you and I are both witnessing. Matt Walsh addressed this 2 days ago in a video.
Why was Carmelo Anthony allowed to receive his diploma? He killed an unarmed white kid and then lied to police about stashing his knife in the bleachers. And it seems like the kind of thing that should disqualify you from graduating. I don't know. And while we're at it, what evidence was there that Derek Chauvin actually killed George Floyd? Even the jury told CNN they didn't actually think Chauvin killed Floyd. They convicted Chauvin because, in their view, he didn't demonstrate enough compassion to a man who was clearly overdosing of his own accord. And while we're at it, why were the prosecutors allowed to lie to the jury about the relative amount of fentanyl in Floyd's system by comparing his blood samples to samples from overdose victims that were taken long after their deaths? Until we get serious answers to these questions, don't talk to us about the Cinnabon woman who had a bad day. Okay, she's not a hero or martyr, but she is the predictable result of decades of anti-white propaganda that has destroyed far too many lives. And like the Cinnabon woman, we are all tired of it.
Now, I don't think this is necessarily a race thing coming from the Marxists. This is the party that wants tyranny. This is the party that wants fascism. They want communism. They want socialism. And the one thing that stands in the way all over the planet is Western civilization. We're the ones who just kicked it out of Venezuela. We're the ones who kicked it out of Russia. We're the ones who squished them in the Cold War. We got it kicked out of Romania and Hungary and Czechoslovakia and Poland and all the other countries that tried it. We got it kicked out of Ethiopia. We got it kicked out of Taiwan and kept it kicked out of Taiwan. We got it kicked out of the north half of the Korean Peninsula. There has not been a bigger enemy to socialism in history than people from Western civilization, and that just happens to be a subset of white people. So no, they're not after white people. They're not trying to extinguish white people. They're trying to extinguish Western civilization. They're trying to exchange the evil individual capitalism from their terrible exploitive system to their utopian socialist system. And they know, unless they can do something about us, every time it's tried, we stop them. But when you see some of these other stories, why did the Somali fraud go unquestioned for so long? People were worried about being called racist. Well, why is the George Floyd issue? Why did that have so many people upset and they were burning down their downtowns in dozens of cities? It's all about racism. So much of this seems to be about racism, but I'm trying to make the point that politically speaking, the Marxists, the leftists, they don't really care about race. They're not racist. Now, they'll exploit the existing racial tensions throughout American history to push their agenda forward. They will use the useful idiots who are motivated by racial talk to be their cannon fodder in the streets. But make no mistake about it. They don't hate us because of the color of our skin. They hate us because of our ideas. They hate us because Western civilization has stopped their utopia everywhere it's tried. Well, I mean, stopped it from expanding. If you just contain it, it implodes on a long enough time scale. And so that's the real thing. And for the white supremacists, like the Nick Fuentes of the world, love to glom onto the, see, they hate you, they hate white people. No, they don't hate you because of the color of your skin. They hate you because you stand up to them. They hate you because people from Western civilization, most notably white men, but it could be anyone who adopts our principles, we're the ones who grab our guns and fight the tyrants off over and over in history. In fact, we're pretty much the only country that hasn't had a for real tyrant. Ever. So Gad Saad, I think he pronounces sad, actually. It just is S-A-A-D. I read his book, The Parasitic Mind. Started following him on social media, and every once in a while, he just drops some gems here because he's in the same boat. He's a person of color. He's originally Lebanese by way of Canada. And so as a person of color, and I believe he's Jewish too. So he has a couple of strikes there in the intersectionality scorecard. He talks about what's really the underlying issue here in saving Western civilization. And I'm not sure we understand that or have the guts to stand up for it.
Hi, everybody. This is Gad Saad. In order for the West to win this civilizational battle, it must, 1, proudly and unequivocally defend Western values. 2, reject cultural relativism and the unicornia vision of multiculturalism. 3, recommit to individual dignity over the celebration of collective identity politics. 4, recognize that all cultures are not equal. 5, recognize that all religious beliefs are not equally consistent with Western values. 6, recognize that all immigrants are not equally likely to assimilate and adopt Western values. 7, recognize that immigrants who espouse intolerable values that seek to destroy our civilization will be deported en masse. 8, implement a rational immigration policy that recognizes the importance of cultural homophily, which is basically the idea of choosing immigrants who hail from cultures that possess similar values to those of the host nations. 9, exhibit zero tolerance for seditious belief systems. Such systems can be criminalized if they constitute an existential threat to our freedoms and liberties. I could go on, but the latter 9 items, some of which are correlated, would be a good start. Here's the problem. I don't think that the West has the testicular fortitude to implement more than a small subset of the latter 9. Hence, to reiterate a prediction that I've been making for several decades, the West is in a death spiral. It will be ugly, painful, and bloody. The greatest tragedy is that the West brought this on itself because of parasitic, quote, progressive follies. The most dangerous weapon in nature is a human mind infected by ideological parasites. Have a good day, everybody.
800-288-9227. Your response. This is Michael in Dallas. You're on WBAP.
Yeah, so I don't think they're practicing genocide against whites. We're practicing genocide on ourselves with our lower birth rates. The other birth rates in the Asian cultures and the Hispanic cultures are much higher than ours. What's a tragedy is that the best system for human freedom and economic growth is by far and unequivocally Western civilization and its ideas of individual freedom and capitalism, and that's what they're trying to exterminate.
Yeah, and well, it's not much better over in parts of East Asia because I think South Korea has a much lower birth rate than even we do. They might be the lowest in the world. This seems to be something that just goes along with being a developed country. As soon as you get to some level of standard of living and technology and lifestyle and luxury, that seems to go with it's like obesity. We thought obesity was just like a problem with American culture, like Americans are gluttonous because all these other countries aren't fat like we are. Turns out we could just afford food before they could, because now that Mexico can afford all the food they want, they're even fatter than us some years. And that's not a Western European enriched country. That's a Latin American country. So the declining birth rates, I don't know if it's necessarily something wrong with Western civilization. I think it just goes along with being wealthy, because I wouldn't consider, like, Japan has a lower birth rate than we do too. I wouldn't consider South Korea and Japan Western civilization, but they do have a whole lot in common with us. And in fact, that's kind of the only part of the planet that we consider a first world country that's not white.
Yes, that's true. I'm talking in the more global terms that generally there are more whites in the more developed countries, and we're all experiencing lower birth rates. And
yes,
it's not just America and the top economies. It's the same in Russia.
Well,
in general, we're experiencing lower birth rates than across Asia and across Africa and across this.
Well, I like how you're blaming ourselves, because no one is doing it to us. This is sort of an auto genocide, and you see throughout history, other civilizations have just genocided themselves, that just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled until they are no longer in the history books. But make no mistake about it, he's right. We are doing this to ourselves. But really, it's the birth rates are so different based on ideology, because conservatives and libertarians and religious people tend to have a lot more kids than non-believers. And me and Miss Parker have 4 kids. Hi, Miss Parker. We have a lot of liberal friends. None of them have more than 1 kid. I think one of them has 2 kids. That is it. So really, I mean, this whole liberalism thing, is it going to solve its own problem? I mean, if you abort half your kids and the ones that actually make it out, you encourage them to either be gay or trans or childless or double income, no kids, or just wait so long, then it's too late, or maybe just have one. It's almost like a self-correcting mechanism. In today's Garrett's world, kids get out of the car, right? Isn't that sort of the warning? If you're a younger kid, say under the age of 10 or so, you might just want to turn it off and come back in about 2 minutes, all right? This is today's Garrett's World.
So, just a heads up. If you have kids listening near you, you might want to ask them to leave the area. This is a story about Santa Claus and other holiday icons. So, when I was really little, my parents had made the decision that they would never flat out tell me Santa doesn't exist and would let me figure it out on my own. And when I did, they would tell me the truth. That is exactly what happened. They had always hyped up Santa Claus for me, and for the first 6 years of my life, I truly believed he was real. That is, until 2004, when I was 7. I was starting to realize that many of the gifts I had received over the years didn't really line up with what Santa was traditionally shown to deliver. Instead of bears and toy soldiers, I got movies, soundtracks, books, video games, and franchise-specific action figures. Things I had also seen at Target and Toys R Us. Finally, I built up the courage to ask my parents the dreadful question: is Santa Claus real? Mind you, I waited well after Christmas that year. You know, just in case. My parents were a little thrown off at the moment. I'm not sure they were ready for me to figure it out at such a young age. However, they gathered themselves together and confirmed the hard truth. I think it was just as hard for them to tell me Santa wasn't real as it was for me to figure out he wasn't. I then started realizing if Santa didn't really exist, then that means the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy, both of which I also held a strong belief in, weren't real either. My parents also confirmed this with me, but they also told me something very important. They may not be real, but do you know who is? Jesus. And that's a belief I've held on to ever since, and even before then. I've never forgotten that while the commercial icons of both Christmas and Easter may not exist, the reason we celebrate the holidays, that being the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, absolutely do, and will remain forever and always. I end with a quote from one of my favorite Christmas movies, The Polar Express. Sometimes seeing is believing, and sometimes the most real things in the world are the things we can't see.
That's today's Garrett's World. See, this is what I'm talking about. He's so wholesome and suspicious. And Garrett, I'm glad you were able to share that story, because 2025 was a rough year for you.
It was rough, but we made it through it, and those good memories that I get to share with you guys now, they help me get through those tough times.
Do you have anything more recent for Garrett's World? These are all childhood stories. Like, what are you like Jesus? We don't know what you did between 12 and 30?
Just the younger stuff is just more interesting, I think. It's more fascinating to learn the history before we learn the current stuff. Learn the past before you learn the present.
I like that. I also I like this because the people listening to the James Show get to share watching you grow, watching the evolution of this segment. Because I've said in meetings, I don't know if I said this on the air, but 1 year from now, Garrett's World is going to sound way different. You are going to evolve. You are going to change. You are going to learn. You're going to get better. And so just like, you know, the first song that a songwriter writes, he's not going to be proud of it a year later. The first time you play violin, it's going to make that screechy, terrible sound. You're not going to be proud of that a year later. So I'm looking forward to watching this evolution along with the other people who listen to this show. But Garrett, we got to get some wilder stories out of you, bud. We've got to. Can you get in a car wreck? Can you get arrested? Can you get in a fist fight or something? I don't know, but break a beer bottle and try and stab someone with it? Or I mean, I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying something along those lines.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
We'll see, but not at the moment.
All right. Coming up next. Because this almost sounds too good to be true. And too bad to be true, I should say. But John Rocker, who in the 90s was a pitcher, I remember him playing for the Braves, and then he played, I think it was for the Yankees for a while, wasn't it? And he got in a lot of attention because in an interview with, I think it was New Yorker magazine or something to that effect, he talked about how riding on the subway was dangerous and full of smelly foreigners and trash, and it's just a terrible place to live because it looked like the bar scene from Star Wars. And he was just slagging New York City, but a lot of the focus on it was like, oh man, can you believe how racist he is? And it was like, hang on.
New York City!
Is what he said true? Is the subway really dirty? Is it a dangerous place? Is there a lot of crime? Does it stink? So fast forward to now. Let's just go ahead and skip over a whole lot of narrative and just land here. So he's turned into a pretty political animal these days, and it's whatever. I mean, I kind of agree with him, but when you listen to this guy talk for a long time, you're like, oh, I don't think he's very smart. Just because I agree with him, I don't have to think he's smart, right? Well, he looks smart in this video because according to him, the accounting firms that were tasked by the state of Minnesota, they got the contracts to run audits of these social programs, you know, Feeding the Future and the daycare and the home health care and the autism centers and whatnot. Some of these accounting firms are also run by people who have Somali-looking names. So John Rocker went to go check them out. Well, let's go to this accounting firm. Let's see. What's this address? Blah, 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 blah. Put that in the phone. Okay, so John Rocker's going to show up with one of his friends, and his friend's got a cell phone and is talking to him. And they show up at this building, and not only is there no cars in the parking lot, there's not even any lights on. There's not even any sign that even the electricity is turned on. There's not even any sign that anyone's been in there in months, if not years. It looks like a totally abandoned building. Now, again, I don't know how much I trust John Rocker. I don't know. Maybe he went at the wee hours of the morning on a weekend. But if all this tracks out to be true, there's just a whole nother layer of stink on this. So the people that were hired to oversee the Somali fraud, were they themselves Somalis participating in the fraud? So what are they doing? They're not actually doing the audit. They're just taking millions of dollars from the taxpayers. It makes it even worse. So here's John Rocker at a door that looks like it's welded shut. No joke. It looks like it's just a medium-sized grocery store. But none of the doors were open.
Doors welded shut. That's normal. Isn't that a fire hazard?
Isn't that a good start, though?
Effing doors welded shut.
He does the voice that I do that I affect when I'm making fun of hicky people like him. And I'm not making fun of hicks. I am a hick. I'm from the country. I just crawled out of a log cabin, fell off a hay trailer last month. But even for me, that's funny.
Effing door look welded shut, man.
Doors welded shut. That's normal. Isn't that a fire hazard? To weld your doors shut? Seriously.
That's wild.
That's a welded right there. So was that one right over there.
Well, Rocker, what do you think? How good of a job you think they're doing in there at auditing?
Well, they don't even have floors or lights now, so not very good. But I'm sure when it was open, they were doing they did a hell of a job, I'm sure. It was open. Like I said, not exactly Arthur Anderson.
An Arthur Anderson joke. That was younger people. Arthur Anderson was a famous accounting firm that went under for helping Enron cook the books. It was a whole scandal thing. But, all right. So can more people do this? Because if this turns out to be true, and I have such a hard time believing that it's just really that easy. You just look up these things online, you go to the address, boom, we've busted fraud. Clearly, this is not a fully functioning accounting firm. It's not a fully functioning anything. It's not even a functioning building. They don't even put up the facade of an accounting firm. They didn't even put up a misspelled sign that said Arthur Anderson or something. I don't know what they would put up there. But if John Rocker just did circles around all the investigative reporters from the big networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News, this is really pathetic on just how easy and open and brazen and blatant the fraud has been. And some of this is your money. There's federal matching dollars with a lot of these programs. This is your money. This is how easy it is for someone to move here from a country with an average IQ of 4. And I'm kidding, it's like 72, but it's really low, y'all. To just come here, sign up for benefits, and get millions and millions of your dollars with no oversight, with no checks, no balances, no confirmation. Look at how easy it is to rob you via the government. And I still have people who push back when I say things like, well, we need to get charity out of the hands of government, or we need to end social programs. We need to end all social programs. We need to handle this with the private sector. I don't know, Parker. I don't know if we have enough money to do that. We don't have enough money to keep doing this. And it's sad that a half-witted baseball pitcher is running circles around the investigative abilities of the news networks. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next on The James Show, young people, we're tired of hearing about your anxiety. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.